think often what happens with disordered eating is our values become a bit skewed, because I think, if you ask most people when they're 90 and they're looking back on their life, what is it that's going to be important to you? Of course, it's going to be like relationships and work and career and all those travel, exciting, stimulating things. It's not going to be like, I don't know, I had a 6-pack and I weighed X pounds, is it?
Hi, my name is Johnny Lawrence and welcome to another episode of Life Talk. Today I'm here with a lady known as the Eating Disorder Therapist. She also has a podcast called the Eating Disorder Therapist Podcast and believes that you can find peace with food and stop disordered eating. Today I speak with Harriet Frew. How are you, Harriet?
Hi there, Johnny. Yeah, no, I'm good, thank you.
Yeah, how's your week been and your day so far? All right?
Yeah.
You sort of spoke briefly. You've had one of those days, haven't you? Bless you.
Yeah, today's been one of those days, but generally, yeah, pretty good, thank you. I've got 3 teenagers who are getting on with homeschooling pretty well, and we're there's quite a lot of humour in the house in between bits and pieces. So yeah, and we're all fit and healthy, so pretty good overall, thank you.
That is good to hear. I mean, I was going to talk to you today about disordered eating, but I'm going to sack that off and ask you, how did you get the children to do their studies? Because that would be really valuable to me right now.
Well, I think it's just different. Once they're teenagers, they get all this kind of interactive, online learning. So they literally log on at 8:30 in the morning, and then they have their teachers doing these interactive lessons all day. So that really makes my job a lot easier. I literally just have to feed them, give them cups of tea and biscuits and things, and just check in on them. So it's a whole different ball game from when you have primary school age children. So I really feel for you, because I know you are in the trenches a bit, aren't you?
Hey, listen, it's character building. That's what I like to say. That said, though, I am going to pile the kids in a car and come to your house because it sounds amazing. I'd quite like teammate for me. That sounds amazing. Well, I'm glad it's going okay. That's good to hear. I never wish. I'm not one of those that's like, it's bad for me. I want it to be bad for everybody. So it's all good. But I'm really grateful for your time today. Thank you, especially after the day that you've had. So, thanks for doing this. I just wanted really to start with, if you could explain to the listeners, the viewers, just a little bit about yourself and what your journey was to becoming the eating disorder therapist.
Sure. So I'm Harriet Frew. I'm a therapist, and I have sort of specialised in my career in supporting people with eating disorders, disordered eating, improving body image. So my journey started off with my own experience of having an eating disorder in my late teens. I very much, at the time, I was really desperate for some support. I had bulimia, so I was in sort of cycles of restriction, binging and purging. But so then there was just very, very little help available. And I kind of decided sort of quite early on, really, probably when I was about 23, that I wanted to help other people to have a different experience from what I had had. And at that age as well, I was still sort of in my own recovery. And I guess I kind of very much went into it all as the wounded healer. As I was kind of healing myself, I really wanted to heal others too. So it's always just really been because I went into this field through my own experience. I've always been extremely sort of passionate about it, and really felt that I really wanted to inspire and encourage others that recovery is possible, because of, I guess, I've walked that journey, and it's something I continue to be sort of very inspired and passionate about today, many years on.
So when did your sort of concerns start really in your life around disordered eating? Did you say bulimia?
Yes. So, actually, as a child, I had a very relaxed relationship with food. I grew up on a farm with 3 sisters, was very active, had a mum who always cooked really delicious food, had a lot of good routine, a lot of nice social interactions around food. And I was just naturally slim. I didn't ever really think about my body. But it all sort of started when I was around sort of 16, 17. And at that time, there was quite a lot of, sort of emotional stress going on at home. My dad was really set on me staying at home and working on the farm. And I was like desperate to go to university and to like, you know, just have my own freedom and find myself and do all of that. And I think I just had such a lot of conflict around that because of I'd always been this kind of quite a kind of people pleasing person who liked to sort of make sure everyone else was all right, and I was the eldest child, being responsible, all of that kind of cliched stuff, I guess. And so I was in a lot of conflict really because of I felt I couldn't really win, because if I went to university I was kind of going to be letting him down, and then I was going to be feeling immense guilt. But I knew if I stayed I would just feel completely sort of frustrated, and that wouldn't really be right for me. So I had quite a lot of that going on. And at the time as well, as I broke up my first boyfriend at the time.
Oh, bless you.
Yeah, that was you know, really, really like just that kind of real heartbreak of your first love.
Yeah.
So just all those things coming together really. And it wasn't about weight and body image. Like it wasn't that I suddenly had been really sort of worrying about food or how I looked. It was all these kind of emotional problems coming together. And then the weight and the body image part almost came secondary to that, because I remember looking in the mirror one day and just thinking, oh, I don't like my body, I need to lose weight. And I mean, I wasn't overweight, I was, you know, healthy weight, but decided I needed to go on a diet. And I kind of did quite an extreme diet, and I lost a lot of weight very, very quickly. And I guess put my body really into sort of starvation mode, and was experiencing then lots of the kind of symptoms that you experience with starvation, you know, being extremely preoccupied with food and cold and not being able to concentrate, tired, exhausted all the time. And I very, very quickly spiraled into bulimia. So I was sort of very underweight for about a period of 3 months, so quite a short-lived period, and then sort of fell into bulimia. My weight restored back to normal kind of quite quickly, so kind of everyone around me presumed that I was fine, and I was far from fine really, because actually I was probably worse than when I'd been underweight. So yeah, so then for like 7 years I was actually sort of caught in cycles of restriction, binging and purging. And you know, and it kind of ebbed and flowed. I had periods which were much worse. I still went off to uni, yay. But it was, you know, and I would kind of be okay in the term, and then I'd come home and I'd almost have a massive rebound, relapse in the holidays, kind of being exposed to stresses and things again. Yeah, so but it affected me for 7 years, and but thankfully I did recover through various means.
Yeah, well, firstly, you know, well done, because you know, that is an achievement, I think, personally. But do you see it that way?
Oh, yeah, I do. I
Yeah,
do. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. And how's your thinking these days? Like, so as we sit here now, you know, is it in not having a full understanding, is it something that could so it's always there, or is it something that comes and goes, or is it sort of under control now?
Well, I think for me, actually, I feel I have completely, genuinely 100% recovered. You know, like I eat intuitively, I eat all the foods, I have quite good body image. Yeah, I genuinely feel I've made a full recovery. I don't know if it's always that way for everybody. And I think what really helped me is I think I had that period from sort of 0 to 17 where I had a really good relationship with food, and I was an intuitive eater, and I kind of had that reference point of what a really healthy relationship with food could be like. So I think for me that's kind of that helped me, because I had that reference point. And I think maybe if you've had an eating disorder, say from at the age of 11 or 12 or something, and it's dominated all the way through your teenage years, then I think that can be a bit more tricky sometimes. You know, I think I do like to think full recovery is possible for everybody, but I think, you know, it helped me that I had that really good solid period of having a healthy relationship with food. So yeah, I know I'm genuinely recovered 100% today. Like I haven't sort of purged for, I don't want to say how many years actually, because
no,
I don't know how old I am.
Yeah.
But it's a long time.
No,
It's a lot of years. And
I'm glad to hear it's a lot
of
of years.
it's a lot of years. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously really nice to hear that you feel that way. And I was curious about, and through this sort of conversation, if I ask any questions that you don't want to answer or you feel is not appropriate, please just tell me and I'll shut up. But I'm quite interested because having been in the health and fitness industry, I've met a lot of men and women that have had disordered eating, and because I've never had that myself, my understanding is sort of limited, really. I do my absolute best to do all the reading and understanding that I can, but obviously without going through it myself, my understanding is always going to be limited. But what goes through someone's mind when they look in the mirror and decide that, you say you look back in hindsight and say I was a healthy weight or I was a good weight, but at the time you didn't see that. What is that thinking there?
Well, I think what happens is when you have an eating disorder, your self-evaluation becomes very focused on your weight and shape. So I guess, for good mental health, it's quite helpful to like derive your self-worth from lots of different parts of your life. Maybe so like your relationships, your hobbies, your work, your friendships. Maybe your weight and shape might be in there as well, but across the whole spectrum. Whereas I guess when you have an eating disorder or you're developing disordered eating, you start to put too much focus on your weight and shape as the primary means of self-worth. So you start to pay more attention to your body, maybe by weighing yourself or looking at yourself in the mirror. And and I guess like with anything in life, when we start to pay a lot of attention to something, it kind of expands, doesn't it? And we have more thoughts and feelings and behaviors all develop around that. So that's often kind of where it sort of starts off. And then I think you get caught in a sort of difficult cycle then that's hard to break, because of if you get up every morning and you weigh yourself and then you look in the mirror and you take ages to get dressed because you're staring at your perceived worst body part, then you maybe get the evidence then that you don't look right, so then you restrict your eating and then you become preoccupied with food, and it goes on.
Yeah, I mean, there's a well-known life coach, Mel Robbins, I'm sure you've heard of her, and she says what you focus on grows stronger, and I suppose that that can be a positive thing if you're focusing on something that's positively working on your self-development, then that's great. But equally, it can obviously be a destructive thing as well. So that's why I think it's such a valuable saying, what you focus on grows stronger, But so, that's interesting that, that you talk about that sort of measure of all the different markers of your self-worth in life, because we're currently, I can't say when this will go out, I'm not sure yet, but at the moment we're in lockdown. And I suppose people are, yes, there'll be people that are going through homeschooling, there'll be people that will be trying to work from home, but there will be some people that want to get back to work and can't. They might not have any children at this point, and their focus might be on their weight or their body image, and they also might be stressed. And as we all know, it doesn't escape anyone, myself included. Sometimes when we stress, we like to overeat, or we sit and watch Netflix and have some popcorn or chocolate or whatever. So at the moment, I suppose it's very possible that people are going to be focusing on their body parts more and their body. And what would you say to someone that's going through that at the moment, someone that's potentially obsessing over their body weight, their body image during the pandemic?
Yeah, and I think it's really tough, and it's really understandable, isn't it, in a way, when things have been taken away that used to like stimulate us and offer us kind of like sense of worth and purpose and all of that. I mean, I guess I'd say the first step is almost just to take stock and just notice really if you're doing more of that, because of, I think it's just beginning to have that sort of self-awareness and just to think about, actually, is this what I really want to be doing? So I think I think often what happens with disordered eating is our values become a bit skewed, you know, because I think, you know, if you ask most people when they're 90 and they're looking back on their life, what is it that's going to be important to you? Of course, it's going to be like relationships and like, you know, work and career and all those like travel, exciting, stimulating things. It's not going to be like, I don't know, I had a 6-pack and I weighed X pounds, is it?
You're so right. You really are. I've literally never had a conversation with an older person who said, look at this 6-pack I've had. And I've literally, that's never happened to me. Sorry, I interrupt anyway.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's so true though, isn't it? But I think the trouble is when we're in the eye of the storm and a bit like the stress of the pandemic, it's easy to get a bit skewed with your values. And particularly when there's a lot of stuff on social media or from the government talking about kind of weight and things as well. So I suppose I'd just try and say to people, just try and take a step back, think about what's going on, think about your values, have a bit of compassion for yourself in a way that, you know, you probably are feeling like this. And, you know, I think it's going to be understandable. There probably is going to be a bit more emotional eating going on and using food as a kind of comfort and soother and things, because we've kind of been robbed of some of the other things that I guess we'd normally use at other times.
Yeah, I mean, we can't see people at the moment. We can't go places. I mean, you can't take away your sort of food pleasures as well. It's just it's a bit harsh, isn't it? That's
definitely
where you mention compassion, I suppose.
Yeah, no, I think it's really, really important to be compassionate to ourselves at the moment, because yeah, being super critical, you're probably going to end up turning to food even more to soothe and feel better.
Yeah, I mean, and how does someone strike that balance? Because obviously, you know, there's compassion, but then there's also, there will be people that will be overindulging, and to a certain degree that's okay, but you know, you could go the other way and develop a problem the sort of the other way as well. So sort of how do you think, you know, see, I don't expect you to have the exact answers, but how do you think is it possible to sort of to strike a balance?
You know, I think so. I mean, I guess it's, again, it comes back to that kind of awareness thing and trying to understand kind of maybe why you're turning to food, because if in a way you want food to be there as a source of comfort and soothing and everything, don't you? But I guess in a way you want to feel like you've got a range of strategies that you could use to sort of help with your emotional well-being. So, you know, it might be, I don't know, like going out for a walk or like chatting to a good friend, or I don't know, you know, whatever it is, crochet or something, you know.
Yeah.
But I suppose it's almost like, I think we can easily get into the habit of just using food as the default thing to turn to. So again, it's like kind of stepping back and almost asking yourself the question, you know, what is it that I really need right now? You know, how am I feeling? And taking that sort of stop and pausing and tuning in really to how you're doing, and then thinking about, is it food I need or is it something else?
See, that's amazing advice, because and what's remarkable to me as I sit here now is over Christmas I had the pleasure of talking with 2 people that coach in the world of alcohol and alcohol recovery and going alcohol free, and they said the same thing, you know, putting your hand on your heart and asking yourself, what do you need? You know, that and to me, I think that's probably the most beneficial thing I've heard in recent months, actually. And strangely enough, it's the one thing that if I find myself, you know, getting frustrated with the children not doing what they're supposed to be doing, or, you know, even just spending a lot of time around the same people, you know, wife and kids, dog, all that sort of stuff, frustrations build up, and you know, we're allowed to go out for one walk. It's very tricky. So, you know, that what do I need? Why am I frustrated? What's going on? You know, it might just be that, you know what, today's just one of them days and I'm struggling today. And actually, it's all right to say that out loud. And once everybody knows, that compassion comes into the room, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think it sounds very simple, doesn't it? Like tuning in and saying, like, what do I need? But I think it's so hard for us to do that sometimes. We're often so distracted or busy or, you know, doing whatever. We forget to just do that, don't we? And it's anyway, it's a very simple intervention, but it's sometimes we need to just really make the time to just have that kind of little pause.
But quite often, don't you find it is simple? Essentially, when it comes to most things, the equation is generally simple. It's often the practice of it that's the difficult bit, because us
Very
complicated
true.
humans and all our emotions and all about
Yeah, so
over
true.
analyzing, it's nightmare. I mean, very often I find, especially with the clients that I've worked with, no one's going to be harder on them than themselves.
Yeah.
Some of the things I hear people say about themselves, and I find myself saying very
Mm,
often, would you say that to somebody else? Because if you wouldn't,
mm.
why in earth would you say it to yourself? But it's the way they feel, and it's a very sad place to be, I suppose. But I mean, obviously we're talking about disordered eating, and I like the way you define that as disordered eating, because that, a lot of people might listen to this and think, well, I haven't got an eating disorder, I don't overeat, I don't undereat. But there are, when people use labels like good foods, bad foods, and things like that. So what's your sort of definition, would you say, of disordered eating?
So yeah, I guess it's when lots of different things really, but when there's become a lot of kind of judgment around food. So yeah, when you're like labeling foods as good foods and bad foods. So I guess eating hasn't become just like a just as a functional experience anymore in terms of putting nutrients in your body. Eating starts to cause a lot of anxiety, guilt, shame often. So all those emotions get tangled up with it. I guess it's when you're doing anything like restricting, and that can be, I think people often think of just like calorie counting or something, but it can be like missing meals. For some people, it might be doing intermittent fasting if that's not really very healthy for them. It could be multiple, it could be kind of like being too precise with your macros. So that feels very restrictive. Disordered eating also includes things like binge eating, we're eating out of control, large amounts of food in secret. It can mean purging, taking laxatives. It can mean over exercising. And I guess essentially what overarching with all of this is just like an intense preoccupation with food and your body. So you're not just kind of getting up and being able to get on with your day. You've got this kind of constant preoccupation with food and exercise and all the kind of anxiety around eating that doesn't really go away.
You mentioned a word there that I think is worth talking about, and that's the word shame. Again, another
Mm.
word that comes up within other areas such as alcohol and other addictions and things like that. So, like when it comes to food, what is that shame? What does that feel like, and how does it present?
Well, I just think it just feels really sort of despairing and hopeless and like wanting to sort of just hide away, and that you've just done something so wrong, like you're feeling bad from your core almost, in a really quite extreme way. And I guess, with food, it can, people can attach, I guess, so much shame to like their weight changing, or if
Mm.
they've eaten like a bad food, or they feel that they're not following their plan properly, they're not exercising enough. So they can carry those intense sort of feelings of like just being really bad, when they're not kind of following through on what they feel they should be doing with food and exercise.
So I've had conversations with, as I say, men and women over over the last year, unfortunately. And a story I hear very often is a point in the day, someone getting very, very stressed. They're in the kitchen, and before they know it, they've eaten a large bag of crisps or half a packet of biscuits, and they feel that shame so much so that they
Mm.
stuff the packet right to the bottom of the bin, as if anyone in the house is going to judge them of any way. But again, that's what that shame is. It's not about somebody else judging you. It's about you judging yourself. Am I right in thinking that?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I think there's often, yeah, intense fear of being judged by others as well. And maybe that's come from early figures in your life, but then it very much becomes how you parent yourself,
Love
or
that.
however you want to phrase that. So yeah. So yeah, just feeling, yeah, that intense self-criticism, self-loathing, feeling that you've done something terribly, terribly wrong.
So we've had a conversation before, and I kind of resonated with some of the words that you used, and you know, we've already gone through one or two of them now, but that statement there of parenting yourself, that's something that it's really come into my world recently. And what do you mean by that when you say parent yourself? Because I think I know what that means, but I'd like to know your definition.
Sure.
Yeah, sorry, I'm putting
Yeah.
you through it today, aren't I? Like, come on, Johnny, I had a rubbish day.
No, it's good. Yeah, so I mean, I guess from when we're very little, you know, we have interactions with our parents and other authority figures who are significant in our lives. So, you know, and that can be a mixture of perhaps really positive interactions. So, you know, as a little child, if you've received a lot of acceptance, love, encouragement, etc., you're kind of going to grow up with that feeling like a kind of normal, and you will be unconsciously then able to do that for yourself much better. So if you've received a lot of encouragement and warmth and kindness, you will feel deserving of those things. So then you can then start to kind of parent yourself, you know, how you treat yourself in a similar way. Whereas if you've experienced maybe sort of criticism, or, you know, sometimes, you know, more extreme things like trauma or abuse, or, you know, when you haven't been treated so well, unconsciously as well, you can grow up feeling quite undeserving, maybe unworthy. And again, unconsciously, you will then kind of parent yourself probably in a similar way. And it's not something you'll be rationally thinking about doing, but you can't almost help yourself. So yeah, I guess it's kind of a sort of basic sort of thing in psychology, in a way that we, you know, our childhood does really impact us, and then we tend to unconsciously repeat those patterns as adults. Even if we can feel on a rational level, I'm not going to repeat what's happened to me in the past, we kind of do it.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, that very much sounds like, you know, being a parent of two young children, when they're upset or they're distressed, or even if they're just excited and bouncing around the house, there are certain questions I'm going to ask about what it is they need. Like my youngest, for example, are you bouncing around the house because you need to go and kick a ball around? You know, I ask them questions, you know, and I suppose that's what we forget to do as adults a lot of the time. Question, you know, I was reading, I think it's Gabor Mate, and he was saying about, you know, a lot of the emotions that we feel, anger, resentment, embarrassment, that they're not really emotions as such, they're reactions. So why are you feeling those feelings? And that's the sort of parent question, isn't it? If you see your child upset, like, what's the matter, you know? But you wouldn't dare ask yourself that, because you'd feel strange, I suppose. But it's something I'm sort of learning to deal with myself at the moment, due to some unfortunate trauma as a child myself. So I just find all that very interesting, and never ceases to amaze me how a lot of this stuff is all interlinked when it comes to self-development.
Yeah, no, so true, isn't it? And I think what's often missing as well for many people is, I think as well, you can have very kind and caring parents in a way, who can be very supportive in lots of ways and maybe always provided for your physical needs, but sometimes that emotional bit can be lacking. You know, so just not having a parent or authority figure that's consistently there, able to kind of listen to you, ask you how you're feeling. And I think it's quite a common thing sometimes that's lacking. And the trouble is, if you haven't really experienced that as a child, in a way, you don't really quite know what you're missing as an adult.
No, you're
So
right.
it's a whole new thing to kind of relearn, to learn, really, isn't it, for the first time, thinking about, actually, how do I feel?
Yeah.
And what do I need?
I
You know,
mean,
it's all a bit new.
when my wife came into my life, obviously she didn't come into my life as my wife. That was later. But you know, she's pretty much a Care Bear. So she's like the most
Oh.
loving person ever. And you know, so much about that experience, meeting her family, because her family were very much the same, you know, that love at first, that, you know, that they would always kiss and hug you when they saw you and stuff. And I very much was like, whoa, this is strange. And you know, that's when you start going, is it is it them that's strange, or is it me, you know? And even with my children, one of the reasons why I pay so much focus on myself now when it comes to that is because I realized that some of my behavior around my kids and love was a bit, you know, disjointed, let's just say. So it's some, and again, you know, I can easily see how, you know, you take what happened to me and you replace it with an experience surrounding food, how that same thing can happen. You know, that to me is, it's just remarkable, as I just said, how it all interlinks in some way. You know, all comes down to looking after yourself, right, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does.
So a lot of people might be thinking, you know, what has self-development got to do with disordered eating? But at the end of the day, what this comes down to is building, as you say, you know, finding peace with food to stop disordered eating. At the end of the day, eating is nourishment, and that gives us a nice healthy body and a nice healthy brain. And I don't think there's anyone out there that can argue that that's not important towards self-development. So as we sort of stated earlier, it doesn't necessarily have to be, you know, an eating disorder as such, but them signs that you pointed out about, you know, them little things, that the judgments you're making on your body, some of the behaviors you have surrounding foods, even as keeping it as sort of basic as good foods, bad foods. I think that's language that more or less everybody uses now, isn't it, really, whether they mean it that way or not?
Yeah, well, I think sadly, yeah, there's so much labeling and so much judgment around food, and yeah, and it's not helped by, I think, you know, diet culture that's so influential, isn't it? And yeah, it's really tricky, isn't it? Because I think obviously, you know, we have got issues in this country and the Western world in general, with people you know, not always kind of being like really healthy in their body, and being sort of in a sort of healthy weight or whatever. But I think, you know, it's not helpful to address it from coming at it with kind of diets and the kind of good and bad critical kind of labeling, because of, actually we end up sort of then just trying to be really good for a bit and following the diets, then we just end up rebelling, and they're not
Yeah,
sustainable. And
yeah.
you really need that kind of broader kind of picture of working on your relationship with food. And
How
yeah.
does that start? Because I mean, you know, a lot of people out there, let's just say, sort of, I don't know, I work a lot with mothers usually, and a similar pattern that I hear is that they go to certain slimming clubs that have different systems in place, and they, to me, it feels like they stop looking at a plate of food now and see the food that's on the plate, and they see this sort of, I don't know, complicated system of whatever, you know, on the plate. And then when they go outside of that environment, you know, the ready meals and all of the sort of marketing that goes behind some of those them slimming clubs, and they go to on holiday, and they're eating at a buffet, or they go to a restaurant, and despair kicks in. They don't know what to do. They no longer see chicken or rice or pasta or whatever. They haven't got this system that they've been taught is the only way to eat. This is the way that I can eat successfully. So, you know, without sort of going on a tyrant about about slimming clubs and different brands,
Yeah.
how can we get around that? Because that education, you know, I see it all the time of women believing, you know, like I hear this statement very often: this slimming club works for me. And I say, okay, I'm really glad that you feel that something's working for you. However, if it's working, why are you still unhappy? So my question is it working for you, or do you feel like you maybe need to sort of develop a different relationship with food? As you know, as you put, finding peace with food. I love that. I really do think, because it is peace, isn't it? It's that what you talk about, if you know, it sounds like harassment, doesn't it? Like the food harasses you, literally. Like going into a kitchen must be like, for someone who's developing disordered eating, it must be like walking into a room full of people shouting at you, you know. It must be a
Yeah,
really hard place to
definitely.
be. And again, as a compassionately, how can people sort of watch out for the signs, and then what are the signs, and what can they do about it once they've recognized that there might be some disordered eating creeping into their lives?
Well, I think for a lot of people, you know, it can be really helpful to get support, you know, with I mean, I think sort of starting off as well, even just through doing like some self-help reading, you know, like reading books like, say, like Janine Roth or something, who writes a lot on emotional eating, you know, just kind of going down that route and starting to view your relationship with food in a slightly different way, you know, like linking it to your emotions and your self-esteem. And I think so much of all of this, as well, as getting back to kind of self-trust, because I think when you're following a diet or you're going along to a club or something, someone else outside of you is telling you what to do and giving you external rules. And then I guess you stop trusting yourself, don't you? And, and we have the tools within us, we are born kind of knowing when we are hungry, when we are full.
Nicely put. I like that.
We do know, we have
No,
a body, right. and like we can trust our body maybe for our breathing, or knowing when we need to go to the loo or something. And and actually it's just getting back in touch and with your body again. I know that sounds like really simple, and again, that is something that's really quite hard if you've been out of touch with your body for a long time. But I suppose it's moving back towards that kind of self-trust. And I guess, something like the 10 principles of intuitive eating can be really helpful with that, because it kind of puts a bit of a framework around helping you get back in touch with your body and, listening to your hunger, listening to your fullness, not always emotionally eating, having better body image. So yeah, and I guess getting some support if it's, if you've really gone a long way from being in touch with yourself, you might need some help to get back to a better place with food.
So a key point there is accountability, isn't it? Like, not feeling like your development towards healthy eating or whatever, however you want to phrase it, is down to somebody else, or even not following a diet. I like the word you used, framework. I like that, because it suggests that it's wide open and that you can apply many things to it, to a certain set of principles, instead of you must only eat this, you must only eat that. So yeah, accountability and creating some form of framework.
Definitely. And I think as well, I think what's sort of very subtle with the whole diet kind of industry is it is very critical and very harsh, and it promotes a lot of kind of guilt and shame and low self-esteem, really. I mean, that might not be its intention, but I think that's often the result. Whereas I think when you start to work on your relationship with food and become much more in tune with yourself again, you're going back to that place of like, what do I need? Being self-compassionate, viewing the kind of bigger picture, the sort of holistic picture of health as well, rather than getting so fixated on it being like what you've eaten and how many steps you've done or whatever.
Yeah, I bet you hear an awful lot of that. I know I do.
Mm-hmm.
So someone's concerned about their eating, their dieting, whatever it is they sort of call it. And they give you a call. Sort of, what's the first port of call when it comes to working with yourself?
Sure. So at the moment, actually, I do most of my work for the NHS, actually.
Oh, right.
So
Sorry.
yeah. I work in the adult eating disorder service in Cambridgeshire. So at the moment, one thing I sort of offer people is breakthrough days. So I offer people privately intense bits of work. But that's sort of more appropriate for people that have maybe done a bit of therapy already and are kind of looking to kind of get over that last sort of hurdle. So yeah, that's the main kind of face-to-face support I'm offering at the moment. And I've also got some online courses actually that I've been creating. So
yeah, is that a lockdown project?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good for you. Yeah. When will they be coming into the world?
Well, no, I've got a couple online at the moment, actually. I mean, I've got a free taster, which is 10 modules, steps to intuitive eating. And then I've got a kind of upgraded kind of version of that where you get a much more intensive lectures and videos and, taking you through the 10 steps of intuitive eating. And then I've also got a course called How to Stop Binge Eating in the Pandemic, which is 7 modules, I believe. But yeah, so yeah, that's all all available now, actually, if people are interested.
And where can they find that? What's the website for that?
So my website is theeatingdisordertherapist.co.uk.
Great. And they just go on there and it's sort of very intuitively
yes.
find it. Great.
Yes.
And
so
also
I've got links to everywhere from there.
Oh, so it's just come and check this, click this. Nice.
Yeah.
So, and you also have a podcast as well. I've been sort of binge listening to some of that. I'm loving it. It's great. You must be really proud of it.
Thank you. Yeah.
You enjoy it?
Yeah, I do really do. And I think that, like you said there as well, it's just like getting good guests on, isn't it?
Oh yeah,
And then
oh yeah. Getting, you know, people are like, oh, you get some really good guests. It's like, I really do. And like, I'm finding out all this really cool stuff. It's so good. It's like the biggest con ever. I get to speak to wonderful people like you. It's great. Okay, listen, I'm so grateful for your time. I'm hoping tomorrow will be a better day for you.
Yeah, no, well, thank you. I
I will
really
be thinking
appreciate
about.
you.
I'll be thinking about you tomorrow. So,
Yeah.
just mention the podcast, where what it's called again, and where it can be found, and then just any social media or any projects that you got coming up, really, or anything you want to make people aware of.
Sure. So yeah, my podcast is The Eating Disorder Therapist. So it's hosted on Podbean, but it's on most platforms. So you should be able to find it on your favorite platform. And my Instagram is at The Eating Disorder Therapist with underscores between each word. But I think if you just type in The Eating Disorder Therapist, it'll probably come up. Yeah, and do go and check out my online courses. I would be really pleased, if you want to like sign up and be able to sort of embrace intuitive eating through that medium. That'd be great.
I think that everyone should check out your social media just to see your recent post with you in the wig. I loved it. I thought it's fantastic. I really did. I really did think it was a nice post, you know, and strangely enough, my wife found it very welcoming, because she was having some problems over lockdown, just like everybody is, you know, just struggling with stress and how to cope, you know. So it was nice. It's a nice approach, I thought.
Oh, thank you. Well, the wig does come out probably about every, like, I don't know, once a month maybe.
Yeah. Is that something we should look out for? Have we got a hashtag for it, or listen?
No, not yet.
Okay, well, I think you should get on that. What can you come up with? Like, I don't know, we could have the Frew wig, or Harriet wig, or I don't know. No, I've never been good at names and stuff like that. So
but if anyone's got a genius idea, they can like let you know.
Yeah, or go over to your Instagram and let you know. That'd be great. Then you can get it moving straight. You can start a movement. I'm so grateful for your time. Thank you so much. And hopefully we'll get to do this again one day soon. Again.
Yeah, no, brilliant. Thanks very much.
No worries. Take care.